Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I feel like I liked this movie for the most part. There was a couple of things that kind of bothered me. I'll kind of start with those first. It isn't really like too many. The CGI was kind of meh, especially because there's CGI animals. There's a couple of times when the characters have to hunt a boar and the boar is entirely CGI, and I feel like it looks kind of weird. And then I didn't really care for the ending. I'll get to that a bit later in this, though. And just a couple of other things, like the main character. Actually, I'll start with describing what this is about, and it'll kind of transition into this other point I was going to make. So, the main character of this movie is a woman named Linda, and she works at this company, and she's been working there for like 70 I was gonna say 70 years. No, I'm sorry, 7 years. She's been working there for 7 years, and she works for a guy named Bradley, who, it's not his company. It's like he inherited it from his father, and the father's the one that had like built the company, and the son just kind of has it, you know, where he gets to be in charge, even though I don't really think he's the most qualified for that anyway. And he doesn't treat Linda very well, and kind of looks down on her. I think also because she's like kind of frumpy looking. This movie, it does one of those things. It's actually what I was going to mention about, where they'll have like a really attractive actress, and they'll try to make her look like, I'll say like quote unquote ugly, because that's kind of usually how this trope sort of goes, or making them look kind of like nerdy or kind of like frumpy, I think is a good way to describe it, where they give her these little like cardigans and stuff and glasses. I don't know why for this trope they always have it of like they put someone in glasses, and then when the character ends up like quote unquote pretty, especially those kind of like transformation movies in the early 2000s, it's like they'll have glasses and then they suddenly don't need the glasses anymore, which what happens to Linda. I think that's kind of mean. I think there's a lot of attractive people that have glasses. I don't view like glasses as something that makes people ugly, so that's always weird for me with that trope. But they do that to Linda here, where it's like she's kind of a bit frumpy looking in her office job and stuff, and in her life, but then suddenly once they end up on the island, she doesn't have the glass. Well, I think the glasses, you know, they end up in a plane crash and then they end up underwater, so I'm assuming she loses the glasses, but like she wears them all the time at the beginning anyway, so I'm thinking, how the hell is she able to suddenly have like perfect vision and not need them anymore? And then she doesn't have glasses for the rest of the movie, and she's wearing her like underclothes, I guess, you know, where she is made to look kind of more attractive. Like it sort of goes a bit with like, yeah, they're on an island, so they wouldn't really have much clothes and stuff. You know, they're like stranded there, but it still felt kind of weird to me. I don't really like that trope. But yeah, her boss doesn't treat her well. I wrote some complaints about her boss. I think the one thing he was sort of right about was like he was a bit grossed out about her eating tuna. I think for different reasons than I am, though. Like, I'm someone that used to eat tuna sandwiches. Sometimes I'd like bring them to college back when I was, you know, like before I graduated. But I would make sure to like leave the room when I ate tuna, because, you know, you're eating fish and that's going to make your breath smell, and that's going to make the whole room smell, and you're stuck in there with all these people. And Linda, you know, she works in an office where everyone's very close together and is eating her sandwich, and that's the reason I thought, okay, that's like a little, I wasn't even really thinking gross, I was just thinking rude, because, you know, now you got that fish smell and all your coworkers can smell that. That's kind of a little inconsiderate. But I think her boss ends up just kind of getting grossed out over like the tuna itself, but no, he like calls her gross, not to her face, but like Bradley's talking to another character, and I thought, okay, that's kind of weird. And he ends up really judgy and wants to put someone else in a promotional position that everyone else kind of agrees that Linda deserves, just because he doesn't like her, which is pretty messed up, but I guess he can do that because he's in charge. And he gives it to some guy who has only been at the company for like 6 months, and the company basically like depends on Linda, by the way, like her work and everything. Like it would fall apart without her. That's how vital she is. And I thought, okay, that sucks. And then he ends up taking her on a plane with him where she has to do some work there. I think he planned to like fire her after that. And he has a bunch of his buddies that, I don't know if they also work at the company or not. And they end up getting in a plane crash. But right before they get in a plane crash, Linda, I do like how the movie, I mean, you go into it and with the trailers and stuff and know it's like, okay, it's these two characters, it's Linda and Bradley, that are going to end up on this island and having to survive and stuff. So you kind of know that at least one of them's going to be able to survive. But I like that the movie, like, you get to see Linda's house and everything, and she has these like this rock collection and stuff, and she tries out for the show Survivor, and she watches it, and right before the plane crashes, a bunch of people are watching a video of her trying out for Survivor, the show, like it's an audition tape, and they're making fun of her. And well, first off, they're doing it while she's in the room. Well, it's the plane, you know, but she's there, and that was really rude. But also, I'm thinking, why are they laughing at her? She's showing she has all these Survivor skills and stuff. If anything, that's really badass. I don't think that's something to like make fun of someone for. But everyone on the plane except Linda is kind of a dumbass anyway, because they even make fun of her too, because she's buckled in, and some of the other people, you know, conveniently the ones in the movie that are not going to end up on the island, they don't want to buckle in, and then literally right when they say that, the plane crashes. And the plane crash scene in this is pretty crazy, honestly. It's probably, like, in my opinion, like the craziest scene in this movie, where the people get sucked out of the plane, the ones that aren't buckled, and Linda is like buckled in for dear life, and then the plane immediately ends up underwater, and it's suddenly like, okay, seatbelt has to come off, and you have to go up above the water so you don't drown. So that's crazy. Like, you have to first off survive the plane crashing itself and make sure you're in your seat and everything. And Linda almost comes out of her seat because some guy is like, hey, I want you to give me your seat so I can live, and you don't, which is, you know, pretty fucked up. And then it's like, you better hope you can swim, because then the plane ends up underwater and you have to swim out of it. And the guy that tries to take Linda's seat, it's like one of Bradley's friends or whatever, ends up like trying to choke her, and she has to stab him with a fork in the hand so that, you know, he could stop choking her. But yeah, damn. Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause really quick. I've started sort of working, not like an official job, but a job anyways. I've been getting a bunch of texts and stuff, so if I suddenly pause like speaking or the video a couple times every once in a while with some of these, especially with like the movie reviews or something, it's because I'm responding for that. Anyway, but yeah, the plane crash scene is crazy. And then Bradley, he ends up getting injured. I don't remember what happens of how he gets injured, but he gets injured, and Linda basically has to like nurse him to help and stuff. But throughout everything with the movie, he's being a big jerk, where I actually kept hoping like, okay, she should probably just leave him for a while, because he doesn't apologize to her for being mean. He actually gets annoyed at her of like, why are you trying to collect food and water? Like, he doesn't get it. Instead of putting out a distress signal, and it's like, you just crashed on an island, you're gonna need food and water as your priority to make sure you survive, and then try to get help. And then she even tries to feed him because he, you know, needs to build back up strength. And he's like, no, I'm not eating that. I think it's just like fish or something. And it's like, dude, you're injured on an island. This is no time to be picky. And he's just being such a baby about it, where she has to like force feed him. But she manages to like stay positive throughout almost the entire movie, which I thought was kind of nice, actually. Kind of balances out her and Bradley anyway. And then I was actually really glad I like cheered when she ends up leaving him alone for like a day, and he starts needing water, and then she comes back, you know, to make him realize like, oh, maybe I should be nice to this person that's like helping me. The part when Linda, she ends up having to kill a boar, that was also pretty crazy. I will say, as kind of a warning, I should have given this earlier, this movie definitely does not shy away with blood or some of the injuries that the characters get. Someone almost gets their like eye gouged. Actually, I don't think it comes out. I don't or no. Someone almost gets their eye like gouged out. The fight against the boar gets pretty intense. People get like stabbed and stuff. So I feel like I have to give that heads up, but maybe you already knew that. I didn't, because I didn't know this was going to be a horror movie. And the funny thing is, I actually had watched the trailer for this when, like, I think the trailer was originally coming out. I thought it was like this revenge thriller of like these two people on the island and she was going to like get revenge on him or something. I didn't know it was a horror movie, because her revenge ends up getting like more and more worse, where they're like trying to kill each other and stuff. It's crazy. And I felt bad for Linda. Oh yeah, I'm gonna start getting into like kind of spoilering more things with this from this point onward, by the way. It's interesting, like Bradley keeps saying about he wants to leave the island and like, hey, shouldn't we build a raft or an SOS? And Linda's like, no. And I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. She doesn't want him to leave the island. But it's that you can tell she's enjoying her new situation of not just living on the island and being away from her office life, but also her control over Bradley. That's why I find Linda kind of an interesting character, where it's like she's enjoying getting revenge on her boss, but it's also that she's become like a sort of reborn version of herself. Like, she was in her office life for like 7 years and everything, and now it's like she gets to be free on this island and no one gets to tell her what to do and use her survival skills, because she wanted to like be on Survivor and stuff anyway, so being on this island is like a dream for her pretty much. And then there's this one part when it's set up kind of like an office meeting to parallel something from the beginning of the movie, where Linda has this like cute little camp or whatever, and Bradley is like having to apologize for being a jerk and to try to get to stay at the camp, and to the point where he was starving so much he was like driven to eat a bug, and meanwhile Linda's like eating in front of him to like taunt him and stuff. It kind of reminded me of the first Madagascar movie, where Marty, you know, the zebra, he ends up having his own camp when they get stranded on the island, and Alex the lion, I always think of one of the memes about him whenever I say Alex the lion. Anyway, where he doesn't have any survival skills and he has to go over to Marty's camp to apologize. It's like a very similar scene, and you know, it's really funny. I'm mentioning about that because I have the movie Madagascar on DVD, and I asked my dad, I was like, hey, I want to watch this, and I pulled out this movie so we could watch it. So I think we're going to watch it tonight. So it's going to be very interesting to go from this movie to go to its kind of animated counterpart, the Madagascar movie. Just the first one, though. I don't have any of the others. I don't really remember the other two, to be honest. I mean, I was going to watch Madagascar anyway at some point, because my dad had mentioned about wanting to watch it around this time, but yeah, the fact that I'm going to be watching it the same day as Send Help, and I did not plan that. I mean, I did, after I got through a little bit of Send Help, I asked my dad, like, hey, we should watch this movie, but I didn't plan that, like, when I woke up today, so that's kind of funny. So yeah, you'll probably, if we end up watching it today, you'll probably get a review of Madagascar. Okay, anyway, but yeah, that part reminded me of Madagascar, so that was kind of funny. There's like one sort of heart-to-heart scene between Bradley and Linda, where she mentions about how she has a dead husband that didn't love her and now she lives alone with her bird. And I think Bradley talks about his mom, and it's one of those kind of scenes to kind of give more info about like kind of why the characters are the way they are. I thought that was actually kind of a nice scene. And then, yeah, it does kind of start turning a bit more into a horror movie of Linda saying that she doesn't want to leave the island, and it gets kind of more crazy where, like, Bradley ends up poisoning Linda and messing it up because he doesn't know the doses, so that he can go on a raft and try to leave, but his raft ends up falling apart immediately. And she ends up having to save him, and then she isn't even mad about being poisoned, and she even like gives him advice about how to build a better raft and stuff. And I thought, wow, she's the most patient person in the world, and not even getting mad or anything. If it was me, I would have been pissed at this guy like day one on the island. But then you see she gets her revenge, which I was a little bit confused about it at first, because she ends up giving him this procedure, I think trying to castrate him, but she doesn't actually do it. And then she pulls out a rat, and at first I was thinking, did she put a rat inside of him? Which I'm still a little confused at. But what I think she did do was paralyze him with like venom or whatever it is from an octopus, which is kind of nuts. But I do like that she tells him, she gets like directly in Bradley's face, and she's like, don't ever mistake my kindness for weakness. And I was like, yeah, you tell him, Linda, because I was still like rooting for her at that point, and then I stopped rooting for her because then there's these people that show up on the island. Bradley, I think it's his fiance because she has a ring. I'm assuming either fiance or wife. And there's this other guy, and they apparently came to the island to rescue them because the fiance is saying like, hey, I got my own boat, I found my own search crew, we're gonna rescue you guys, aren't you so excited to go back to the island? And Linda's like panicking and doesn't want to get rescued, and she lets them fall off a cliff on purpose, and that's kind of the point where I feel like she goes from victim to villain. And actually part of the reason I have a problem with the ending where really good things happen for Linda at the end, and I thought, okay, but you let these two innocent people die on purpose. I feel like I can't root for you anymore after that. But then Linda and Bradley, they end up getting into a fight. That's where it kind of gets more violent. I think he just like rips off part of her scalp. It gets like kind of gory in their fight. And then there's this whole reveal where there turns out this entire time there's been like some billionaire's vacation home on this island, and the crazy thing is like Linda has known about it the whole time, and I should have seen it coming. I mean, you can even see in the poster too, like she has a knife, and she even points it out of like, where am I gonna get a knife from on a deserted island? And I didn't think about that either, because you'd see her use the knife to cut things and whatever, and I didn't even question it, and I probably should have. But yeah, she got the knife from this house, so I feel like I was duped as well as Bradley. But the scene when he ends up finding the house is cool, and Linda's talking on this like speakerphone thing or whatever and saying like, yeah, I've known about this place the whole time. We could have gotten, because the truth is we did see her in an earlier scene see a boat towards the beginning of the movie, but she didn't want to get rescued, so she didn't tell Bradley about it or try to get the boat's attention. I think it was just like the caretakers for the house or something. So yeah, they could have gotten rescued. But then it shows the rest of the scene where it reveals, oh, Linda saw that they were actually going to a vacation house, and there's a house here, and she's known about it this whole time and everything. And that's why she had a knife. And then she reveals that she's in love with Bradley, and she wanted them to live together forever on the island. And I was wondering about that. At first I was thinking through most of this, because he's been a jerk to her and everything, and I thought, okay, she wants to get revenge on him, and she's enjoying living on the island. That makes sense to me. But then I was kind of considering the potential romance angle, because I thought she is being unusually like I don't think anyone would be this patient with somebody that's been a big dick to them this entire time and trying to survive and stuff. And I thought, why is she trying so hard to keep him alive and everything? This can't just be, I don't think this could be out of the goodness of her heart. But no, it was that she was in love with him. But the thing I'm still wondering about was like, was she in love with him the whole time? Like, as soon as they got stranded on the island, did she want to keep him there forever? I thought she mentioned something about romance earlier in the movie. She, like, talked to her bird. I think about Bradley noticing at her Christmas party. So maybe so. I might have to go back to look at that scene. I might have just, like, missed that. But yeah, it's a good thing that I might have potentially forgot that scene where that detail was revealed, that she loved him. Because I feel like if you go into the movie knowing that, that kind of changes things of like, well, yeah, she's in love with him. She's probably going to try to keep him there forever, rather than like, oh, it's her boss that treats her like shit and she's probably going to torture him and stuff. It like gives a different perspective to everything. And then he tries to give her an apology while he's being held at gunpoint. She ends up shooting him because he plans to attack her and stuff. And that's the other thing too with Bradley as a character, of like, every time it seems like, okay, maybe he's become somewhat of a decent human being and has a change of heart, it turns out no, actually he hasn't. So it's like, I did feel just a little bit bad for him being held at gunpoint and crying and everything. And I completely understand at that point why he wanted to attack Linda, because, you know, she's holding him at gunpoint and he knows at this point, like, okay, yeah, she's crazy. She's never going to let me leave this island and she needs to, you know, be like knocked out or something. But yeah, I still can't really think like if there was ever a point where he was showing a bit of character growth. I felt like it sometimes. I feel like with the stuff he said in the scene where Linda's talking about like her dead husband and Bradley's talking about his parents, I feel like that was genuine. But I feel like it could have been that they both could have died on the island. I feel like that's how it should have ended, because she kills him. There's actually a really nice like transition between, she hits him with like a something and it like hits his eye, and right before his eye gets taken out of his body, there's like it cuts to like a golf swing, but the transition between the two is so smooth. Actually, that was really nice, and it shows that Linda's a celebrity now and she's the sole survivor on this raft, and because she actually knows how to build a proper raft, and she gets to play golf now and stuff, because they mentioned about golf at the beginning of the movie. And I thought, man, I thought she didn't want to leave the island. Like, I thought she would end up staying on it and not get rescued because she was enjoying it. But it kind of feels a little shitty in a sense of like, she kills everyone else that's coming to this island and kills the person that she loves after this entire time he's been wanting to get rescued. And now she lets herself get rescued and go. I mean, I sort of get it because, you know, she tried to kill someone, or no, she did, and the person died, and Bradley found out. It was his fiance, actually. He finds her hand buried in the sand with a ring and finds her corpse and cries, and I felt bad for him in that scene. Because I think he's a shitty person, but I don't think he deserved that. But yeah, that was kind of weird to me. Of like, did she actually want to leave ever or not? Was she planning to leave the whole time? You know, it's like she didn't let Bradley leave and killed him. I mean, he would have, if they both left, he would have absolutely like told someone that Linda killed two people, and they'd probably believe him and she'd get arrested. So I understand that she had to kill him and then get rescued, but it's still kind of weird to me. I thought she'd want to get, I mean, she did mention she missed her life a little bit, and I think it was specifically she missed her pet bird, but she seemed really happy on the island, so I thought she would stay there as like the island crazy person or something. And I still don't know if she was like in love with Bradley the whole time. Like, I want to get inside of her head from like the minute the plane crashes on the island of what's she thinking. But yeah, I feel like I couldn't root for her anymore, but that's probably supposed to be the point of like, you know, her ending just doesn't feel earned to me, of her becoming a wealthy celebrity and everything, because she killed those two innocent people that were just trying to help. So I feel like that wasn't earned for her. Like, if it was just her and the boss and no one came to rescue them and there weren't any other characters after they crashed on the island, and him being like a dick the whole time, it's like, okay, I'd understand that. I would root for her, because even if it did end with like her killing him and stuff, of like, yeah, she gets her revenge and she gets to leave and it's like a punishment for him, you know. But just the fact that those two people, she ends up killing them, I mean, she feels bad afterwards, but the fact that she still does it, you know, because she wants that life with Bradley so badly at the end and then she doesn't even get it, and then she leaves. It just didn't sit right for me. I feel like they either both should have died on the island, or she should have just remained there. I feel like either of those two options, I feel like it would have just wrapped things up better, but that's just my opinion with it. But yeah, I still thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I like these kind of horror movies where it's like a bit more psychological, kind of this sort of like cat and mouse game between these two characters and such. I'd be down to watch more stuff like this. All right,